168 Opportunities Podcast, episode number 98. How to properly set up Google Analytics in 3 simple steps. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 160 Opportunities Podcast. My name is Peter Audal, your host, and you are listening to the podcast where we leverage strategy, tactics, and tools in digital marketing to help overwhelm small business owners and marketers, generate more leads and sales, to find more clarity and freedom in their business, and ultimately, their life. Thanks for coming back out. I truly appreciate it. And those who listen in for the first time, thank you for coming. I always love having new people come and listen to the podcast. And I'm always curious how you came to the podcast. Hopefully it was referred to you by somebody else. But like I said, this episode is going to be talking about how to properly set up Google Analytics in 3 simple steps. And there's some major reasons for that, just because I hate even saying that sometimes, but I used to say 90%. Now I'm going to say 95 to 99% of the people who have Google Analytics on their website that I have worked with or helped a friend with, or a client is, working with a client, it's not set up properly. And that's a problem. Because your data is wrong, kind of. At least it's skewed. So I want to help you set up your analytics properly. So I'm going to be showcasing that. This is also an episode where I'm actually going to be recording this with video. I'm trying this out for the first time. And just because there's the side of actually walking through the process of setting up Google Analytics that you can actually watch in the video. However, I want to make very clear that if you were listening to this on like a regular podcast player on your phone, I still am creating the podcast for you, the audio listener, because I get it. If you're like me, you love listening to podcasts because you get clarity and value and learning through audio while you're able to do something else. That's the beautiful part of this medium. And I want to be more consistent with that. I know I've talked about that in the past. And quite frankly, right now, I'm just grateful that I'm actually able to launch an episode every week so far. I'm actually working to try to get that day of the week it's going to be released more consistent. So just bear with me on that. I have a couple days. I'm just trying to figure out which day of the week I want to do that. So anyways, before we dive into the main topic, though, I just want to talk about the tool of the week. And this goes right along with actually what we're talking about today with Google Analytics. And that is within Google, if you have a Gmail account, because you're going to need this, or you need a Google Apps account in order to actually have access to the Google Analytics code on your website, actually view the data and everything like that. So that's going to be an important step. There's also something within I would say the Google platform of when it comes to analytics of Google Tag Manager. And you maybe even heard of this before, but essentially it's this. You have this snippet of code that Google gives you that's the tag manager that you put on your website. Now, why would you put that on your website? Because regardless of the platform you're using for your website, this code living on your website will allow you to add things to your website for tracking purposes, maybe even like exit pop-ups or anything like that has like a little piece of code they want to put on your website. You can do that inside of Google Tag Manager. And so that essentially when the page loads, it fires that Google Tag Manager script, and then it fires what's inside of that because Google Tag Manager fired. So I guess how I'm trying to say this is Tag Manager fires, or the script for Tag Manager fires on the website, and then Tag Manager, I should say, fires all the different scripts that you have loaded into Tag Manager on essentially tagmanager.google.com. Anyways, that is a way to, in some cases, maybe speed up the load of your website so you don't have, let's say you have a heat map tracking, you have session recording, you have a exit pop-up content thing like Opt-in Monster. All those pieces require little codes to be placed on the website. you can put all that in Tag Manager. And so you still only have one piece of code on the website now that's essentially firing all of your tracking, which is awesome. It's really helpful. And when you're dealing with websites where typically you have to have a developer go in and add in that extra tracking piece and all that type of stuff, there is an immense amount of freedom to be able to just log into Tag Manager, create a new tag, let's say paste in your Facebook pixel, click publish, and now it's on the website. I didn't need a developer for that. It's just one of those things that's extremely helpful. So my recommended tool of the week is Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager. So it's something I use pretty much for every single client or even my personal website. Yep. All right, so jumping into the main topic of setting up Google Analytics properly. Like I said, most people, regardless of whether they ever do anything like events or conversions, like that's typically what I do when I come in, to have that stuff firing correctly on Google Analytics or just firing at all. The thing when people use Google Analytics is just typically to at least know what's the traffic coming to my website, where is it coming from, and how much traffic am I getting? Well, there's a problem with that, and that is this. Most clients, like I said, I'm trying to remember a client where this wasn't the case, do not exclude internal traffic typically at all, or there's some other internal traffic that they haven't filtered out that might be skewing the data. Oh man, it's even hard for me to even say that just because I'm like I said, I'm trying to think of a client where that wasn't the case, but it's true. So in other words, if you have a business and you have, let's say, 3 computers, or even you're working from home or whatever, and your main bookmark page is maybe the home page of the website, every time that browser opens up, that's considered a session. That's inside of Google Analytics. So unless you've excluded that IP address inside of Google Analytics, you're going to always have that session firing as a visit to the website. But it's all internal. And if you're a local business, that's probably even more important because you're really just focused on local traffic. And maybe let's say you click the city and you're like, oh my word, I've got like 3,000 people locally hitting my website every month. Well, there's probably a good chance a lot of it's internal. So I want to walk through the process of setting up a Google Analytics profile and excluding the IP address. So I'm going to walk through this through the podcast. Now, like I said, you can come to the show notes, and that would be, let's see, this is 98, right? So this would be peterotto.com/098. It's kind of basically the short link here. And there'll be a video there where you actually can see me walk through this process. All right, so you'll go to googleanalytics.com, or just, you know what, that's not googleanalytics.com. Just search for Google Analytics, and you'll get to the login page for Google Analytics. You will need to have a Gmail account or a Google Apps account. I just want to make that very clear once again. And you'll log in, and then if it's your first time, they'll start walking through the process of setting up your first Google Analytics account. Otherwise, you'll need to go find and click a little gear called the admin section and just view your Google Analytics accounts or profiles that you already have set up. And you can maybe skip ahead in this podcast to see where I actually add in the IP filter if you already have tracking on your website. Otherwise, I'm just going to create one from scratch. So I'm just going to call this Test Analytics account. So I just created a new account inside of Google Analytics, and I'm going to do it for peterotto.com. And this is for setting up my property. So like I said, you can have an account, and underneath the account are properties. This is how this works inside of Google Analytics. And properties can be different tracking codes. So this could be for your website. This could be for a subsite. That's another property you create, so on and so forth. Anyways, I'm going to fill out the URL. What category am I in? I'm going to say business, and I'm in Central Time. And there's all this data sharing and settings. For the most part, when you're creating a Google Analytics account, I just click get tracking ID, I leave those all checkmarked because some of those are required to do some extra functionality inside of Google Analytics. So I'm going to accept that. And then I have my property. Now, this is typically where the people end because the first thing they see is now they see the tracking ID with your UA dash, I don't know, 436, whatever, -1. Typically, because that's your first one, -1. Well, what you can do now is most people will just take this code or take that UA code and paste it into a plugin or put it onto the website. So this is the first step. We just created the property, or we logged into Google Analytics and started working on the setup of this. Okay. So the second step is to put it on the website. So you still can use a plugin. But by the way, when I referenced Tag Manager earlier, if you want to put your analytics account, Google Analytics tracking information into Tag Manager, and then put Tag Manager on a WordPress website, there's a Duracell Tom's Google Tag Manager plugin. I just recommend that one because that's the one I've used the most for putting Tag Manager on your WordPress website. So for what that's worth. Otherwise, let's just say I'm not even going to use Tag Manager. I want to put this tracking ID on my website. If you're using WordPress, there's a ton of Google Analytics plugins that just say, what's your UA code? And this is how you can find it. But the other part about this is I have my property. And like I said, most people stop there. So great. Now, when people come to the website, I have this tag firing. That's the second step of installing on your website. The third step, though, is actually creating a new view. So by default, there's a view called All Website Data. Now, this is where you're going to want to create a new view. And this is where I call it internal. I've done this for the longest time. Internal traffic filtered. All right. And once again, you need to select your time zone. So I have that. Now I have a new view underneath this property. In this case, peterotto.com. That's my property in my Google Analytics account. All right. So now that I have this new view, the third step is to strip out my IP address. If I'm at home, okay, and this is where I work primarily, I need to go look at my IP address. So I need to search for just literally do this in Google. What is my IP? Okay. And in my case, it gives me a bunch of gobbledygook. But just to get things started, you can do this where, if this is the primary computer you're going to be using, primary computer that's going to be visiting the website that's of your personal traffic, you can just copy that IP address, go down to inside of the view layer, filters, add a filter. And I'm going to say, in my case, personal computer filtered. Select a filter type, and I'm going to actually, in this case, say exclude traffic from the IP address that, and typically I'll say contains. And the reason for that is after I go out and I research some more of the maybe other IP addresses in my own house that I might use to visit the website, there's typically, if you have a weird IP address where I do, let's say it's 57.d79 semicolon 838E8, and then on the end of this I have 186E semicolon 64E. Well, if we go to another platform inside the house, typically it's not going to be the same IP address, but it's going to have the same letters that start. So long story short is you'll figure out if you keep looking at what is my IP address on other devices, what is kind of like the location for your house essentially with an IP address. And then you can exclude that from Google Analytics. So, and for the most part, if this is a business, there's kind of one primary IP address that's way different than the one I'm showing here, but it's one works for the whole network. So, anyways, this is the IP address. I'm going to click save. And now, moving forward, when I come and look at this analytics view, I'll select internal traffic filtered, and I'll actually see my traffic filtered out of Google Analytics. And that view will give me the most accurate data. Now, the other part about this, just a quick reminder here, is when you're filtering out other traffic, there's some other places you want to filter out, and that is potentially other people that you're working with, if you have a virtual assistant, things like that. They just need to go through that process of what is my IP. They'll send you their IP address, and you'll just start inputting them. And here's the thing. I admit you're probably not going to get every IP address filtered out that's internal traffic, okay? But if you take away the majority of traffic that's coming from your own personal computer, or from your work location, or from your employees' work locations / I don't know. If you know your mom's IP address and she keeps hitting your website, that's another thing you could do. Once you have all those filtered out, that view is just going to get better and better for you to actually be able to trust that. Okay? That's really important. Because now, when somebody's doing a test conversion on your website, let's say down the road you're going to be tracking form submissions. If you don't filter out internal traffic, and Joe at the branch just decided to do 6 conversions in a week, testing things, well, unless you have the full story, your analytics is going to show 6 form submissions, and you're not going to be none the wiser that, this is internal traffic. At least not at a glance view. So that's why this is so important. That's why when I work with clients, this is something that bothers me, because I'm like, oh my goodness, what if they're making decisions on these traffic numbers they see? This data could be way off, could be completely skewed. And then it also helps is if you've had a analytics profile you've been working with before. So if you're watching this or listening to this, and there's an analytics profile you already have, log into that profile, create that second view I talked about of internal traffic filtered, and then after a week or a month, go between the internal traffic filtered and the all website data. And that's where you can see, like, oh my goodness, there's a 10% difference. There's a 20% difference. Depending on some places, it might be massive. It might be, this is crazy, but a 30% difference in total traffic to the website. Probably not likely, but there's scenarios for everything. So I just want to be very clear on that. Anyways, once you have this set up, this is where you have a reliable Google Analytics setup account properly. Okay, this is why when somebody like me comes in can help, or as you progress to do more with event tracking and conversion tracking, you're not as worried about internal traffic filtered. Like I said, you might not be able to filter everything out, but you just took out a massive amount of bad data out of the view, and that's so helpful. So, all right. That's where I'm going to leave this episode. I hope you've found this helpful. Like I said, this is a great way to set up your analytics properly. Like I said, basically 3 simple steps. You create a Google account, or Google Analytics account. It'll walk you through the process of setting up the property. You then create another view outside of all website data, and typically I call that internal traffic filtered. And then I find my IP address, and I take that IP address and I put it in the filter and have it excluded out of my data for that view. So helpful. You can confidently actually look at your numbers, and like I said, at the minimum, have a better understanding of, like, okay, this is good data. This data has internal traffic filtered. Now, there's other things with spam traffic that we'll need to get into another point, but for now, just know that this is a great way to kick things off so that your data has that stuff excluded. All right. I need to cue up the music here. There we go. All right. Thanks for listening to this podcast. I'm so grateful. I hope you found something great and value out of it. I'm looking forward to being back next week. I'm just continuing on this process of walking through, essentially starting from the beginning of getting ready to do like paid advertising and how to set that up properly. And quite frankly, this is a pillar episode. Setting up your Google Analytics properly is so key. All right. Well, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me on Facebook. That's if you just go to Facebook and search Peter Adal, you'll find my page. Feel free to message me there. If you have any questions, you can obviously go to the website peteradal.com. The show notes for this episode is peteradal.com/098. That's a shortcut to there. I am just looking forward to 2018, and I hope you are too. And podcasting is one of those things that I'm going to be doing a ton more with this year. So thanks for being a part of this journey with me. Super excited to see what happens this year. All right, everybody. For those of you listening in your car, I hope you make it to your destination safely. And for those of you who are running that mile, I hope you finish it. And for those of you who found me online and stuck with me through the whole episode, thank you. I hope you come back again. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye.